Well, hello. Welcome to a new episode. In this episode, we will be talking about the Sabbath. And how does the Sabbath relate to Yom, meaning a literal 24-hour day? So the Sabbath, 24-hour day in Genesis, do they relate at all? First of all, I want to say that this seems to be a really good argument for young earth creationists. So I tried to find all the references to Yom and the Sabbath. And I found these three basic passages from Exodus 20, Exodus 31, and Leviticus 23. And I found a little bonus in Leviticus 23. So let's go for a bike ride together, as I like to do, to think on these things, and let's learn together. Verses about the Sabbath. Exodus 16:22. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Exodus 16:26. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath. In it there shall be none. Exodus 16:30. So the people rested on the seventh day. Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Exodus 29. You shall labor 6 days and do all your work. Exodus 20:10. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to Yahweh your God. You shall not do any work in it, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your livestock, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Exodus 31:12-13. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak also to the children of Israel, saying, Most certainly you shall keep my Sabbath, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies you. Exodus 31:14. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Exodus 31:15. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to Yahweh. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall surely be put to death. Exodus 31:16. Therefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. Exodus 31:17. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Leviticus 23:1-2. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and tell them, The set feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my set feasts. Leviticus 23:3. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no kind of work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your dwellings. Leviticus 23:15. You shall count from the next day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. Leviticus 23:13. 32. It shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall deny yourselves in the 9th day of the month at evening. From evening to evening you shall keep your Sabbath. Leviticus 23:33 through 34. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say, On the 15th day of this 7th month is the feast of Booths, for 7 days, to Yahweh. Leviticus 23:35. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no regular work. Leviticus 23:36. 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation to you. You shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. It is a solemn assembly. You shall do no regular work. Leviticus 23:37. These are the appointed feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh, a burnt offering, a meal offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings, each on its own day. Leviticus 23:39. So on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruits of the land, you shall keep the feast of Yahweh 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. Leviticus 23:40. You shall take on the first day the fruits of majestic trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Yahweh, your God, 7 days. Leviticus 23:41. You shall keep it as a feast to Yahweh 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall keep it in the 7th month. Leviticus 23:42. You shall dwell in temporary shelters for 7 days. All who are native born in Israel shall dwell in temporary shelters. Leviticus 23:43. That your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in temporary shelters when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh, your God. So, what did we learn about the Sabbath and Yom meaning a literal 24-hour day in Genesis? Well, the two big passages came from Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. And this is repeated in Exodus 31:7. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. So first of all, the thing I notice is it says 6 days, not 6 normal days. And I remember this note that was sent to me by a young earth creationist. And this note says that all things were made within these 6 normal days. Nothing that exists in our reality was made outside of those 6 normal days. So I really like that message. You can't add normal days, though. That's just your interpretation. But nothing exists in our reality outside of these 6 normal days. So I was thinking about that. So that means that Genesis chapter 1:1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty. Darkness was on the surface of the deep, and God's Spirit was hovering over the surface of the water. So in verse 1, where it says, in the beginning, when was the beginning? Well, we know at least that it must be part of these 6 days. But then that creates a problem. Like Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And then in verse 5, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening and there was morning the first day. So the pattern, God said, and then there was evening and there was morning the first day, is broken. It doesn't work on the first day. It also doesn't work on the seventh day. And I know that the seventh day could be because it's not a creation day. So he doesn't have to say, and God said. But doesn't this open the door to the days being different links? Genesis, the first day is very different than the other days. At least opens the door. And also, there's no reason to believe that the seventh day is 24 hours. It doesn't have "and God says." It doesn't have evening and there was morning. There's no reason to believe that's 24 hours. There's no reason to believe it isn't 24 hours either. Remember in the note they said they were made within these 6 normal days. Well, sticking in normal, that goes to your interpretation. What happens if I go the other way? Like Exodus 20:11, for in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. What happens if I change this to, for in 6 long but indeterminate time periods, God made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh long but indeterminate time period? Well, that fits the meaning of the word yom. It could mean a long but indeterminate time period. So if we can stick in normal days, why can't we stick in long but indeterminate time period? It does fit. And this is a little extra nugget I got from Leviticus chapter 23. In verse 42, it says this: "You shall dwell in temporary shelters for 7 days. All who are native born in Israel shall dwell in temporary shelters." And then, "that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in temporary shelters when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God." So this is known as the Festival of Booths. It's supposed to be a fun festival in Jewish tradition. You make these little booths and it's like camping out. But the idea is you're supposed to dwell in temporary shelters for 7 days. But this is done to commemorate 40 years in the wilderness. There's the seven again, 7 days. But one day does not equal exactly a 24-hour day. Doesn't this set a precedent? If you could have, not an exact equivalent here, couldn't you have not an exact equivalent in places like Exodus 20? We're still left with that though. Okay, if we know that Genesis 1 and 2, all part of day one, we still don't know whether these are actual 24-hour days. Again, I'm being totally open here, not listening to people. All I'm trying to do is understand the scriptures. And we've shown this. What about the frequency of the word yom? And I gave these 8 reasons why I thought this was not the greatest argument for young earth creationism. Number 1 was no writer would write this way. 2 was, should we throw out every lesser used words? Number 3, how can we ever write something unique if we're not allowed to use lesser used words? Number 4 was Genesis was written first. So who did Genesis copy from? Number 5 is this is the time to use this word. That the examples used elsewhere were about Israel's history. Didn't last for millions or billions of years. This is one of the only times where it actually could mean that. Number 6, is the Word of God just a word search? Number 7, are we going to do this with all common words like path and door? And number 8 was the Bible was written by many authors, not one. They were all written to different people in different circumstances, in different times in history, for different reasons. The writers had different temperaments, different levels of education, different styles of writing. The writings were in different genres: historical narrative, prophecy, love letters, straightforward history, poetry. Do we really expect the Bible to use all words the same way everywhere? What about this argument, a number used with a day? Well, I looked through as many as I could find, and virtually every time these were used in this moment, and usually talking to a person and telling them to do something, usually within a week. Can we really connect this directly to Genesis? Or we're not talking to a person, and it's not within a week or a month or even a few years. What about the argument a child will see a literal day in Genesis 1? Well, they might see a 6-hour, 12-hour, or 18-hour day, but not a 24-hour day. I just found these just weren't very good arguments. But then we have this idea of the Feast of Booths, where you dwell in temporary shelters for 7 days to commemorate 40 years in the wilderness. I think that does set a precedent that it doesn't have to be a one-on-one correspondence. And again, as we said, that if you just, put in long but indeterminate time periods, that's literally what the word in Yom could mean. It's possible. And you also could put in a normal day. That might be possible too. So if I read this passage, Exodus 28, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You shall labor 6 days and do all your work. And then in 11, for in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, I can see this as being a very good argument for young earth creationism. The best, actually the only one I found so far. If this is a one-to-one correspondence, God has a literal 24-hour days, you work a literal 24-hour day. This could really mean that that's what the word Yom in Genesis 1 means, a real 24-hour day. But if you look at like the Feast of Booths, where one day doesn't have to mean, an exact one-to-one correspondence. And we do this all the time. We have a lot of holidays where the length of the holiday doesn't line up exactly one-to-one with the time frame. It doesn't have to be a literal 24-hour day. You don't have to go to that interpretation. I'm very honest and open. From the text, it doesn't seem like this is the only option that we have. Let's continue to be open and honest. Let's continue to just look to the scriptures to try to answer these types of questions. Let's keep learning together. And now for our new modern expression. As old as Methuselah. This means someone or something who is really old. This comes from Genesis 5:25 to 27. Methuselah lived 187 years, then became the father of Lamech. Methuselah lived after he became the father of Lamech 782 years and became the father of other sons and daughters. All the days of Methuselah were 969 years. Then he died. So I was thinking, what would you talk about if you live for 969 years? As old as Methuselah.